Okay guys, in this demo we are going to learn how to build a human ear using an edge flow modeling technique. So what we have here is an ear that, I don't know, I think I spent like a half hour on this thing. And so it builds a very convincing ear in kind of a very short period of time. Again, using the edge flow technique, which I'm about to show. So we have here this image, which is an edge flow structure of a human ear, drawn over the top of our reference geometry. But I don't want to use this scene. I want to go ahead and set up the scene again. So I'm going to go ahead and reset this scene first. Do I want to save my changes? No. Do you really want to reset? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and create a box. And I'm going to do that in the left orthographic viewport. And I'm going to hold down the control key while I do it so that I make my box completely square. And then I'm going to give it a little bit of depth. And then I'm going to go over here into the modifier tab. And I'm going to change the height to something very small, very shallow, like a 0.01. And so I'm just going to give my box basically kind of a 0 depth, almost as if it's a plane. And that's what I want. I'm also going to turn off the grid at this point, so I'm going to hit the G key to do that. And then I also want to turn off the bounding box on my box, and I'm going to hit the J key to do that. Then I'm going to go to my folder that contains my reference images, which is, I've copied it to the desktop here. Navigate over to it, desktop, and I'm looking for the folder called Human Ear 3ds /max. You can also find this on the Kong drive in the ref folder in the lecture 9 folder. And what I'm looking for here is this image right here called Human Ear Ref Side 01. And that's my ear reference model for the ear we're about to build here. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy, I'm going to drag and drop that image onto my plane here. You can see here that it's getting ready to texture map this because it lights up with this little plus key right next to the cursor. And if I let go, it's just going to texture map that image to my my ref plane. And so we have my ref plane in here texture mapped with the edge loop spec for this model. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start creating the geometry for the ear. And the way I'm going to do that is, first of all, by going over here to the orthographic left viewport. And I'm going to turn on shaded view by hitting the F3 key. And then I'm going to go ahead and maximize my view here a little bit. And I want to get rid of this graphite modeling tool. I don't really need that right now. And I want to turn off my grid, so I'm going to hit the G key. I also want to move my plane because right now my plane is completely lined up with the origin. And if that happens, what happens is I go over here into the left viewport, and well, it's working now, but sometimes you can't see your marquee drag if you're going to marquee select, and that's because your plane is actually in front of the construction plane, which is at the zero point for that viewport. So the solution to that is to just drag your construction plane to be a little bit behind the 0 line, which is right there in the dark black. And that's going to make it so that everything I create is going to be in front of that plane. All right, so now I'm going to go back to the left orthographic viewport, and I'm going to maximize it. And I'm going to create a polygon. So I'm going to go create standard primitives, and I'm going to do a plane. And I'm just going to trace this plane for this first polygon right here in my illustration. So that's it. I'm done with that, so I'm going to right-click to get out of plane creation mode. I'm going to hit F4 for wireframe on shaded so I can see how many edges this thing actually has. And right now it's got too many, so I'm going to go into the modifier tab. And I'm going to change the number of segments for this plane to be 1 and 1. So now it's basically just a polygon. So it's got 4 vertices and 4 edges. And that basically renders this plane to be just a single polygon. I'm going to now hold down the Alt key and hit X to make my polygon that I've just created see-through, or X-ray is what it's normally referred to. So I'm going to go to X-ray mode by holding down Alt X, and you can just toggle back and forth. by holding down Alt and hitting X, and you can snap in and out of X-ray. I'm going to then right-click on my polygon here, and I'm going to convert it to an editable poly. And by doing that, I'm going to allow myself to be able to go into the sub-object modifications. And then what I'm interested in to begin with is vertex. And I'm just going to move these vertices to line up with my illustration a little bit. I'll turn off that bounding box again. And now I want to create a polygon based on this polygon. So I'm going to start drawing all these polygons individually off of this one. I created this one because I needed a polygon to begin with in order to do that. So now that I'm in the editable poly modifier, I'm going to go to Polygon Mode. And under Polygon Mode, if you go over here to the right, under Edit Geometry, we have a utility here called Create. Now what Create does is it's actually going to create a polygon anywhere I click 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And if I hit the right mouse button, it'll complete that action and draw that polygon. I don't want that polygon there, though. I just wanted to demonstrate how the tool works. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that polygon. And I'm going to right-click to get out of Polygon Draw Mode, Create Mode. And I want to show you a mistake that a lot of people make when they start using this tool. Sometimes people go into Vertex Mode, or they stay in Vertex Mode, and they don't realize they haven't toggled over here to Polygon Mode. So if you accidentally stay in Vertex Mode or click Vertex Mode, and you go to Edit Geometry and you click Create, it looks just like the Create Polygon tool, except for when I click 1, 2, 3, 4, it even looks like I'm drawing a polygon because I've dropped 4 vertices in there. But notice what happens, it doesn't fill in. Can anyone help me with that? It's because I'm creating vertices, I'm not creating polygons. So you want to watch that, because if you do that, these vertices just kind of float out in no man's land. And it's a real pain in the butt to fill all those in. So I'm going to delete those. I just wanted to show you the pitfall there because a lot of people do that. So it's very important to make sure you're in first Polygon Mode, all right, before you go to the Create tab. The next thing I want to do is I want to turn on my snaps. So I'm going to turn on my 3D snaps here, and then I'm going to right-click because I want to set them up. The first thing I'm going to do is hit Clear All because I want to turn all of the snaps off, except for vertex. So I'm going to toggle vertex, and what that means is that whenever I click out here in the interface, if there's a vertex within a certain distance away from my cursor, it's going to snap to that vertex. If there isn't one, it's just going to let me draw whatever there without the snap. So I'm going to go ahead and accept this, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And what I want to do is just go into the Create tab, first of all making sure I'm in Polygon Mode, then going to Create. And I'm going to click on the first vertex here, second one. And if I right-click, it'll complete the action and create the polygon. But there's another way you can do this. You can also click once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and then a 5th time, and then it'll draw it for you. So you can do it either way. You can either click 5 times, and it'll create the polygon, or you can click 4 with a right-click, and it'll create it. I kind of like the 5 method, so I'm just going to keep clicking away here. And you want to make an effort to always draw your polygons in the same order. So if you're going clockwise, always go clockwise. If you're going counterclockwise, always go counterclockwise. And the reason for that is because when the software creates the polygon, based on the direction you go, that's what direction it's going to face the surface normal for that polygon. So it's kind of hard to do, and I'll be honest with you, I don't always get it right. But I do always try to maintain the order, even though most of the time I don't end up getting it 100%. So what I've done here is I've just created that first row all the way around, and then I'm just going to start here on the second row and start drawing all the way around. Now you might get into a situation where if you're zoomed out like this, and you start clicking in here, and see what's happening here? I want to draw a vertex here where I don't have a vertex to snap to. I just want it to draw. And the problem is that when I'm zoomed out like this, the tolerance for my snapping is a little bigger than how far I'm zoomed out on my viewport. So the solution to that is to just zoom in, and then you can avoid that snapping from occurring, and you can finish it. It's not that the tool isn't working. It is working. It's just your tolerance for the snapping is too great for how far you're zoomed out on the image. Right there was another case. That's where I tried to click over here in the void, but it accidentally snapped to the polygon, therefore it created a try. That's not what I wanted. So if I want to stop that from happening, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit to prevent the snap from occurring. And I'm going to keep going. And it seems tedious at first, but believe me, a little preparation goes a long way, and it saves you a ridiculous amount of time on the back end if you plan your mesh ahead of time. You don't always get it right either the first time you plan it out. And so sometimes you can do an edge flow spec for something, for a model you want to create, and you get it a little bit wrong. And that's okay, because what happens is, right now I haven't modeled anything, I'm just tracing. So if I trace this out and I discover that I've made a mistake, all I have to do is pop back into Photoshop and fix my mistake, and I haven't really lost anything. So it's kind of a pre-production method for creating objects. There's a saying in live television that goes, television is 90% preparation and 10% execution. And this is kind of the modeling equivalent of that. Okay, and this one looks like a try, but it's really a quad. I have 4 vertices here, so that's worth noting. And what we do with this ear spec is we've attempted to have nothing but quads, and then I've chosen to have a try in just this one area here, which is where the ear canal goes. And the reason for that is because it really doesn't matter to have a try there. That's kind of a good place to tuck a try away. And so I did that for efficiency's sake. Okay, and I'm almost done. This one's a bit of an oddball, so I'm going to draw it. And there was another example of it snapped, and that's not what I want, so I'm just going to zoom in. And this one's a try, so I'm only going to click 4 times to build that one. Okay, that's it. So I've got my edge flow for my ear completely traced in. At this point I'm still in create polygon mode. So to get out of it, I'm going to right click to get out of it. And now I'm going to, I want to check something here. I'm going to pop over to perspective view. And I just want to see if my vertices are welded or not. And it looks like they're welded, but this tool doesn't always weld the verts. So what we want to do here is we want to make sure that the vertices are all welded up and that there aren't any stray edges that aren't attached. So I'm going to go into vertex mode, and I'm going to select all the vertices here in my edge flow shape, and I'm going to go over here into the edit vertices tab, and I'm going to click on weld with the settings, and I just want to do a small threshold here, like maybe a 0.01 or a 0.05 is pretty good. And I'm going to hit the green check mark box to go ahead and weld that up. And if any of those vertices weren't welded, they probably are now. Alright, so now what we need to do is we've got our shape here. We actually are to the point where we can start modeling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my reference plane. I'm just going to move it off to the right a little bit so that I can now use this as a shape reference for the ear that I'm about to build. I'm also going to turn off X-ray mode on the ear edge flow model that I just built and turn it to a solid object. And now I'm going to go into edge mode, and I want to turn off my snapping because I don't need that anymore, so I went ahead and clicked that off. And I'm going to select all of these edges here from here all the way around to the base of the ear. So we can do these one by one, or I could also select one and then shift double click the one below, and it'll select the loop all the way around. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these edges and I'm just going to pull those out a little bit like so to start to generate the shape of the outside of the ear, like that. Okay, and then I'm going to go into object mode here, and I'm going to pull this image back a little farther because I'm going to start modeling this further. And I'm going to select my ear again, and I'm going to go into edge mode. And again, I want to select that entire set of edges all the way around, so I'm going to click this one, and I'm going to shift click this one down here, shift double click to select all those edges in a loop all the way around. And then I'm going to go ahead and extrude this, alright? So I'm going to go into edit edges in edge mode, and I'm going to click on the extrude with the settings, and I'm going to just go ahead and use a small value, so something very small, because I'm going to manipulate this after I extrude it. So that looks pretty good to me, so I'm going to say accept, and then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to pull these edges that I just created over a little bit, and then I'm going to hit the R key for scale, and I want a uniform scale, so all three axes simultaneously. I'm going to scale those down so that I kind of just flatten those edges out along the top of the ear. So then I'm going to go ahead and extrude this again. So I'm going to say extrude. And again, that's not bad. I'm just going to keep that low value there, and I'm going to click the green box. Or wait a minute. It actually slid my edge over a little bit, and I don't like that. So I'm going to type 0 in here, but I'm going to change the extrusion a little bit. And I don't mind. See how it's kind of flipping it up like that? That's not what I want, but it's okay because I'm going to move it after the fact. So I'm going to say accept, and then I'm just going to hit the W key to move it over a little, and then I'm going to hit the R key, and I'm going to uniform scale these down. And I'm just kind of trying to form that same angle there that's on the other side. And I'm building the side profile of what's going to become my ear. So I need to extrude this again because I need to build the back of the ear. So I'm going to go ahead and click the extrude again. Again, it's doing this weird thing, but I'm going to let that go because I'm going to manipulate it myself. So I'm going to pull these back here a little bit, and then I'm going to hit the scale key, and I'm going to scale these down like so. And what you want to do with this is I'm going to hide my reference plane for a second. So I'm going to right click and say hide unselected. What we want to do with this is this is the internal ear canal. And so we want to kind of move this down and in. And I'll scale this down a little bit, non-uniform here. And I basically just want that edge to be on that side of the ear canal, like so. And I might have overdone it. I'm going to scale that back up a little bit. Something. Okay. So it's essentially like that. This is kind of my back side of the ear. I'll move that in a little bit. And then I need to extrude this a couple more times. So I'm going to extrude it one more time here. Again, accepting the default because I'm going to manipulate this later myself. So I'm going to accept that. Move it over a little bit. Actually, I'm going to leave it right there and then scale it down. And then I'm going to extrude it one more time. Accept the defaults because I'm going to move it manually. So I'm going to hit W key here. And the scale key. And we'll just go ahead and leave it something like that. That looks pretty good. Okay, so what we have here is our basic control mesh. And pretty much with the way that we're modeling almost everything in this class, we're expecting to subdivide this further in order to get more detail and add more shape. But before I do that, I need to extrude my ear canal. So I'm going to select both of these polygons right here, the try and then the one next to it. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to extrude these guys. So I'm going to click on the extrude with the settings. I want it to go the other way, so I'm going to extrude it out. And I kind of want it to go about the distance of here where the ear attaches to the, is going to attach to the head. And I'm going to accept that. And then I'm going to uniform scale this down like so, because the ear canal basically turns in and scales down at an angle and then goes in into the skull, and then I believe it connects up to the brain. So there we go. We have the ear canal constructed. Low-res cage, of course, to begin with. And this would be a great time to save your model before moving on to the next step. So I'm going to go up to the top of the stack here. And I'm going to just go ahead and save this. So I'm going to say Save Scene As. And I'll do the desktop. And I'm going to do human ear. And this one I'm going to call JHT human ear. FA 1201. Let's say save. And now that I have that saved, I'm going to quickly save another one. So I'm going to go to Save File, Save As, because I always want multiple copies of the same object. So I'm going to hit the plus key there to save another version. And then I'm going to go ahead and apply a turbo smooth to this. So I'm going to go into the modifier tab under the modifier panel, and I'm going to say turbo smooth. Okay, and what that does is it just takes all of those polygons and subdivides them once. And we have something that's starting to look a little bit more ear-like, but still is pretty primitive. And at this point, we are ready to start doing some massive shaping. So I want to collapse this stack. I don't want that turbo smooth to be out there in history. So I'm going to right-click on it, and I'm going to say Collapse All. And then it says, warning, you're going to lose all your history, da-da-da. I say yes. Hold yes to continue. And now what I've done is, the slang term for this is to bake the geometry. So I had something with history on it, and now I've baked that history, and I can no longer edit that anymore. But that's fine, because what I wanted to do is I want to get in here and pull points. So the first thing I'm going to do is, when I bake it down, it always turns it into an editable mesh. And I don't want an editable mesh, I want an editable poly. So I'm going to right click on where it says editable mesh there in the modifier stack, and I'm going to convert it to an editable poly. So now that it's an editable poly, now I want to go into the sub-object mode, and I want to go to vertex mode. And now I can start shaping this ear and adding the detail that I need to make this convincing rather than just kind of a wax cutout form, which it is now. So I'm going to select all these verts up here in the top interior. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to first pull those back, recess those a bit. And then I'm going to push them forward, and then I'm going to push them up a little bit. And what I'm doing is I'm creating that curl that you have inside your ear. And it actually starts right about here. And, well, actually, it's different for everyone's ear, so you can model it accordingly based on whoever your reference is. But in my case, mine actually starts to curl a little bit in there, and then it keeps going up, and I'm just going to feel on my own ear where it starts to unfold and come outward, and that is about right back here. So I'm going to select all these vertices. Oops, wrong ones. This row right in here. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull those back. I'm going to pull those out. I'm going to pull those up, creating that fold. And now you can see here that this is kind of thin on this section. And I may as well fix that right now while I'm thinking about it. So I'm going to grab all of these verts along this edge right here. And I'm just going to uniform scale those, I think. Whoops. Accidentally went to expert mode. And this, there we go. Uniform scale those down to give my ear a little bit more thickness. And then for this one, I'm just going to pull it. And then what you want to do once, we're into modeling now, so we're full-blown modeling this ear. You kind of want to, every once in a while, check the NURMS preview to see how you're doing. So let's go ahead and check out that NURMS preview. First, I got to go to Editable Poly, and I'm going to say Use NURMS. And we can see here that in this case, we're starting to get something that's looking kind of natural and like an ear. And we just basically have to keep going. So now would be a great time for me to resurrect my reference image. So I'm going to say Unhide All, and I'm going to kind of use this as a guide for what points I need to pull and how I need to make things look. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my NURMS subdivision, and I'm going to go ahead and click these set of verts right here, which basically represent this little node right there, and I'm going to pull those guys up like so, and then pull these up a little bit and give that thing a little bit of thickness. And then we got this little nodule right here, and that is basically these verts right here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those backward a little bit, and then I'm going to pull this one straight back like so. And so we got the nodules here on the interior part of the ear, and then we have this little curl shape that kind of goes up and around, and then it comes down to here and curls down into the inside of the ear. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to kind of pick these verts, which are this interior spot right here that goes into the canal, and I'm going to move those guys back and down a little bit, like so, and then push them in a little bit like so. And then we have this section here, which looks like it kind of bumps up a little bit. And you got to remember also that every ear is a little bit different. So I might be modeling details into this ear that's not in, that doesn't look anything like your ear or the ear that you're using as reference. But the edge flow is actually in here for you to be able to create a whole number of different kinds of ears. It's just basically what the ear actually looks like. So then we also have this kind of shape here that curls in. And so I'm going to grab these two verts, and I'm going to bump that up a little bit. Then I can grab these guys, pull them back a little bit. And then depending on the type of ear, sometimes people have, this one on the reference model doesn't really have it, but sometimes people will have these little, it's almost just like this shape here, but it happens up here in the top of the ear. And we've got enough edges to do that, so I'm just going to model that in, just in case, well, just to show you how it works. And there's enough edges in this edge flow model to be able to do 2 of those, which sometimes people have 2 of those up there at the top of their ear. All right, and then now I want to go in here and I'm going to feather this transition because it's a little too abrupt. That kind of trails down and in. And then this one, see, it has like a nodule that follows that corner, and it's kind of beefed up a little bit, so I'm going to model that into mine as well. Something like that, and then it just kind of transitions into nothing. And that's probably a good starting point for me to just see, oops, how this is looking. So again, I'm going to go to the top of the stack here, editable poly, and I'm going to go over to my subdivision surface and I'm going to say use NURMS. And then I'm going to hit the F4 key to turn off wireframe. And we got something that's, you know, with a minimal amount of time, starting to look like a nice organic ear. I got my top of my ear a little flat here, and I don't like that. So I'm going to turn off the NURMS for a second. And turn back on my wireframe. And what I want to do is I want to use the soft selection tool, so I'm going to select this vertex here. And I'm going to hit Z to zoom that because my camera was all out of whack. And then I'm going to hold down my shift key and double click because I want to select that entire ring from top to bottom. And then I'm going to turn on my soft selection right here. Where did it go? Up here. And I'm going to say use soft selection. I'm going to turn down my fall off, so I'm just selecting that center vert and then the vertices immediately to the right and left. And then I'm going to hit the R key and I want to uniform scale this up. And that's not enough fall off, so I'm going to increase that. And uniform scale. And what I'm trying to do is round off that top of the ear, but I need to keep increasing my fall off. And there we go. That's what I was looking for. I want to round the ear and have it not be so flat. I could also grab all these verts in here if I wanted to, which I do. And I'm going to shift double click. And I want to flatten the back of the ear a little bit, like so. Okay. And then I got one more area that I want to improve, and that is right down here. And we have this section here where the ear kind of curled under, and it has a little bit more pronounced shape here that I still have not modeled in. So I'm going to turn off the soft selection here. And I want to grab all these vertices, and I just want to widen that out a little bit. And then I want to pull these guys just back a little bit to give that a little bit more definition. And then I can grab these and pull these up. And maybe pull them a little closer. And then I can go down here and I can beef up the earlobe a little bit. And for that I'm going to turn on the soft select. And I'm just going to give my lobe a little bit more shape. And that's probably enough for now. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's the control cage for our ear. And you can see with a minimal amount of shaping, we have something that's looking pretty organic. You could spend a lot more time and get a lot more subtle shape in there if you wanted to. And I recommend that you do. This is just kind of, as fast as we want to do it as fast as we can for lecture. If you have areas like this, so in my model you can see, this is worth talking about. I've got this little area here where it's just a little too sharp there. Kind of the fastest way to fix that is to select the year itself and go to the very bottom of the Edit Poly and use the Paint for Deformation tool. I like to use the Relax. I'm going to change my brush size a little bit. And I'm going to change the strength. I usually like to go to at least 50% to start with. And then I'm going to zoom in, and I just want to soften that transition here. See how that's already looking a lot better? And that's kind of a lot easier way to do that in many areas. And I kind of have one here on the side of the ear also. And I'm just going to get rid of it. And using the Relax is a lot faster and easier than me actually going in and individually pulling all those points. And I was able to correct the my ear geometry in a matter of seconds rather than a bunch of tedious point pulling that could have gone on for minutes. So that's basically it. We got ear canal. We've got nice organic ear. It took about 15 minutes to do. And that's basically it for the ear. Okay, so now we're going to combine all our disparate elements that we've made for our character into one scene file. And so what I've done here is I've created a folder on the desktop where I went and tracked down all of the elements that we modeled. So I just call it Body Combine, and I tracked down my hand, I grabbed my body model, I grabbed my head, and I grabbed my ear. And now I'm going to combine all these into one scene file. So the way that's going to work is I'm just going to go in here to Max and I'm going to say Reset. Scene has been modified. Do you want to save your changes? No. Do you really want to reset? Yes. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to drag these files from Windows Explorer directly into the interface of Max. It's just kind of the easiest way to combine a bunch of files. So the first one I'm going to grab is the body model, and I'm going to drag that in here. You can see here my cursor switches to a plus key, and that tells me that Max is ready to do something with that file. So I drop it in there, and it gives me these options: open, merge, etc. I want to merge this one, and what it does is it automatically attaches this model to your cursor, which is kind of nice, and allows you to move the model around in the scene. So I'm going to try to get it as close to 0 as possible, and I'm going to click. And it puts it on the ground plane, which is cool. And I know that when I just brought that in and placed it, it probably did not zero it correctly. So I'm going to go in here and turn on my grid snaps. I'm going to clear all. And I'm going to say grid points. And I just want to move this mesh. Oops. Accidentally turned that off. I want to turn on grid points. And I'm just going to, I want to zero my mess up on the center axis based on my pivot point, which I already knew that I had centered. So I did that. And then now I'm going to go in here and check it out. Everything looks good. And I'm ready to keep bringing in more elements for my scene. So the next one I want to bring in, I believe, is the hand. So I'm going to go out here to my folder, and I have 2 of those open, so I'm going to stop confusing myself. And of course I confused myself further because I closed the wrong one. I'm going to go out here to the desktop and go to that same Body Combine folder. And now I want to drag my hand in there, so I'm looking for, where is it? Principals Class Hand, so I'm going to grab that one, drag that in. I want to merge it, so I'm going to merge it. And of course it comes in ridiculously huge. That's fine. What I'm going to do here is I want to rotate it. And I'm going to turn on my rotate snaps. And I just want to line this thing up first. And then I'm going to rotate it a little bit down. And now I'm going to uniform scale it. And position it And if I was smart, I would have modeled this hand like with the finger up, like number 1. Yeah, and then it would be appropriately scaled. But instead, it's supposed to be a real hand, so I got to scale it down further. And what's wrong with this hand? Can anyone help me? Oh, it sure is, isn't it? Yeah, I'm just kidding. I knew it was the wrong way. So I'm going to go ahead and I just am trying to rotate this as close as I can into position to match my body model. And then get it about the same scale, but it's backwards. So what do I need to do? I'm going to go into the mirror tool, and I'm just going to flip it Y and say OK. And then I'm going to use this gray axis. This is going to rotate perpendicular to the camera view, and I'm just going to position that a little bit better. All right, and that hand still looks a little big, so I'm going to scale it down a little bit more. And that's not bad, it's close. Okay, so I got my hand, I got my body. Next thing I want to bring in is the head. So I'm going to go over here to my folder that I've organized, and I'm going to grab the head model. I want to merge it again. Max is going to allow me to place it in the scene. Whoops. I'm going to move it into position. Oops. I want to select both. It's always fun to do that. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and scale it. Well, let's see how it looks with the little head. Okay, enough fun with that. We're going to scale this up a little. And then I want to make sure that I zero this as much as I can also. So I could do the same thing, turn on my snaps. Oh, that's good. I don't think it actually snapped, but I eyeballed it well enough that I'm happy with it. So I'm going to say OK there. Looks to be approximately to the right scale. Maybe it could go a little bigger. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then my last element, which is my ear. Rename merge material. No, use merge material. Okay, I'm going to place it at the origin. I don't need that reference plane, so I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to move this guy into position. And for the ear, you kind of want to rotate it a bit, like so. And you could even rotate it a little bit like so also. And I'm going to scale it down. The way the proportions work for your ear is that the top of the ear is going to be somewhere around the mid to the top of the eye and the bottom of the nose. So that kind of helps you position it. And then in terms of where it rests or lies on the skull itself, it's it's on the back third. So if you divide the head into thirds, this would be a third, this would be a third. The ear goes somewhere at about the rear third. So that ear is maybe a little big based upon that, but again, that's just a guide. You can actually, as long as it's within that ballpark, I think you're okay. I'm going to go ahead and position it something like that. Okay, so that's it. At this point, you would go ahead and save your scene. So save as, and I'm going to just call this body combine something. So JHT body combine. I'll call this one 5. Okay, and then now what you want to do is you want to go around to each one of these meshes. I'm going to delete the right side there, same thing with the side of the head. And you want to match the transitions for the geometry, all right? And you want to pick the one that is more correct. So in this case, that's actually neither, but we'll pretend like it's the neck. So let's say I like my neck shape better than I like the neck shape on the body. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into vertex mode, and I'm going to just go ahead and attempt to grab all these vertices and position them as closely as I can. It doesn't have to be exact. To the geometry of the neck on the head. And again, you're not actually working that transition out yet. You're just kind of like getting it a little bit there so that you have less work to do later. And then I could go ahead and grab these verts here. Move those in if I wanted to. Grab these guys. So on the neck here I have like an Adam's apple, so I'm going to count for that. And then you want to do the one at the wrist also. So the first thing I notice here is that my wrist on my hand is probably more correct than my wrist on my body. Because when I was modeling my hand, I was paying more attention to that proportion, the relationship. And so I'm just going to grab these and scale them a little bit, like so. And that looks pretty good. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and save another version of the scene. And I want to introduce you to a tool in Max that's pretty wicked and pretty useful for doing organic forms. I kind of call it like a ZBrush Lite because it's not nearly as extensive as ZBrush in terms of sculpting power, but it is pretty good. So it is absolutely the way for you to model subtle organic details such as muscles into a character model such as this. So the first thing I want to do is just save the scene again. So I'm going to save it as, hit the plus to just save another version. And I'm going to hide everything. So I'm going to say hide all, or hide unselected, nothing selected, so it's going to hide all. And then I want to create a standard primitive, and I'm going to go ahead and do a sphere. And I want to increase the number of segments on the sphere to 100, so it's pretty dense. And then I'm going to hit the J key to get rid of that bounding box. And the tool that I'm going to show you is under the Graphite modeling tools. So this section of the program here is called the Graphite modeling tools, or they also refer to it as the ribbon. So sometimes I'll call it the ribbon. We should probably just call it the ribbon to have a common language for it. So Graphite modeling tools or the ribbon. So the way the ribbon works here is you got this little show ribbon full button. And if you click that, it'll show all the menu items that are in there. But you'll notice here that right now I have this object selected and I've expanded the ribbon to show all the tools, but there aren't any tools in there at all. There's nothing in there. It's blank. And the reason for that is because the ribbon tools do not work on your mesh until you convert it to an editable poly. So watch what happens the moment I convert this to an editable poly. Boom, all these tools show up. Okay? So that's worth knowing. You might go in and you're like trying to sculpt or you're trying to find the tools. They don't show up. It's because your object is not an editable poly. Without the editable poly node, the ribbon doesn't function. Okay? So just to reiterate that, I got my sphere. It's a sphere. There's no editable poly there. I got no ribbon items until I right click on it and say convert to editable poly. Boom, ribbon shows up. All right? So the part of the ribbon that we're going to use is under Freeform. So I'm going to click the Freeform tab, and we want to use the Paint tools. So this display here on this computer is kind of small. On mine at home, they all show up tiled all along the side, and it's kind of nice. This one, I actually have to trick it by minimizing it and maximizing it again to get the tools to show up in here. All right, so this thing is pretty awesome. First of all, it's very intuitive. So these are the paint deform tools. The first of which I want to show you is called Shift. Check this out. All you have to do if you want to know how these tools work is just hover your cursor over it and let it sit there for a little bit, and the tooltips pop up for you automatically. So it says Shift, and then it explains what the tool does, and then it shows you a bunch of hotkeys in order to use it. And what the Shift is it's kind of like a move tool for moving a bunch of vertices around. It's similar to soft selection, but it's a lot faster and a lot easier to use. So I'm going to click on the Shift tool, and notice there's two rings here. We have a black exterior ring and a white interior ring. The black ring is the area of influence, so that's what it's going to grab vertice-wise. And the white ring is the softness of that selection. So I'm going to undo this a little bit, and if I hold down the Shift key and drag up and down, I can change the softness. So if I drag the white circle all the way up to be the extent of the black circle, that's going to make my selection completely hard. And you can see what happens here when I do that. See how there's absolutely no transition between the selection? So you kind of honestly don't ever want to use it all hard unless you have a very good reason to do that. I kind of prefer to leave it almost at the lowest strength setting, which is a 1, which is completely soft. And you can see that that's a nice organic move on that sphere. And then you can hold down the Control key and move up and down, and that's going to change the fall off or what vertices are going to be influenced by that. All right. So in general, you want to keep the and it goes the strength you want to keep at a very low value because that's going to keep everything very soft. And then you're going to change the size by holding down the Control key. And the way to explain this tool is that kind of a little bit goes a long way. So you'd be tempted to come in here and just start ripping stuff off and moving it like crazy. That's not good. What you want to do is you just kind of want to use it to subtly nudge stuff. See how I'm doing that? And you're going to get a lot more mileage out of it if you do that. So that's very useful for when you have your model and you want to increase a bicep or a back muscle or a neck muscle, or you want to repose an arm. This thing is phenomenal for that kind of stuff, and it just works instantly. I recommend understanding that it moves the vertices perpendicular to the camera view. So right now I'm doing this in the perspective view, and see how it draws almost like a vector straight through the object, and it moves the vertices perpendicular to your camera view. So that's maybe harder to explain than it is for you to just kind of use the tool a little bit and figure it out. So I really recommend that you guys use it on a sphere like this and just kind of get used to everything. All right. The next thing under the paint tools, and I'm going to trick this into minimizing, or it's not going to do it now, is it? Okay, I'm going to have to just use it crappy. So the next one is Shift and Rotate. And it's basically the same as the Shift tool, except for when you click and drag it, see it'll actually rotate those vertices. This one, I don't know how useful this is for the current assignment. I'm sure you can find a use for something else, but for the body model, probably not that great. So then I'm going to go to the next one, which is Shift and Scale. This one is kind of nice because it allows you to select a group and you can kind of bulge things. And I can see how that would be useful for a lot of stuff. If you had a muscle you wanted to bulge really fast, you could do that using this guy. And then we have push and pull, and this is probably the most used feature in this tool, and it's similar to the paint deform that I've already shown you guys under the editable poly. So if I go into push-pull mode, you can see here the hotkeys are written right out for us, right below here. It says Shift is to relax the mesh. Control will revert the mesh to its original setting. Shift plus Control will resize the brush, and Shift plus Alt will change the brush strength. All right. So if I look at this cursor once I go into push-pull mode, does this look familiar to anyone? That looks just like the paint deformation icon, except for this one's a lot more powerful. So to change the brush size is, again, Alt plus Shift held down, and then move up and down. And then to change the brush strength, which is this little vector right here, see that little blue line pointing off? You're going to hold down Control plus Shift, and you can move this up and down, and that's going to change the strength. So if I have a big strength, it's going to distort things ridiculous amount. And if I have a smaller, it's going to just distort it a little bit. My rule of thumb when you're using this tool is whatever your feature is, you want to think of what the depth of the feature is you're trying to cut into your mesh. So in today's case, I'm going to use the abdominals. And if you measured the abdominals on a really cut athletic person, the depth of that abdominal muscle is probably only about an inch, maybe an inch and a half if the dude's like on the muscle milk or whatever. Actually, more than muscle milk to get that kind of an ab muscle. So what you want to do with this tool is you want to figure out kind of what your max depth is, and then as a rule of thumb, I like to do about a third on this setting, about a third of what your max displacement is you're looking for. And the reason I do a third is because the brush is additive, and you can keep stroking the brush on top of itself to get the transition from muscle to muscle, etc. And so if I just keep painting here, you can see it's not distorting it nearly what it was before, but with enough strokes, I'm actually able to get quite a bit of buildup there. All right? And it'll just keep going on in infinity if I keep adding to it. Interesting setting here for this, which is under the paint deform, and I want the settings, but it's not. There we go. Over here, docked off to the side, and if you have enough screen real estate, this little dialog box, the paint options, will actually show up right next to your paint settings. So because this screen resolution is so small, it's kind of docking it over here. So this is called the paint options, and we have here the size, which is just the brush size. So if I dial this down, it changes my brush size. We have the strength, which is that vector. And then we have the offset. The offset is kind of important because the offset is the distance that it's going to distort the mesh on any given one stroke of the brush. Okay? So if I limit that offset, I say something like, if my strength is 1 and my offset is 1, and then I cap the offset, in any one given stroke, it's going to cap the offset so it won't go any higher than that. And you just want to play with that to understand what I'm saying, but it's a good idea at times to cap the offset so that the mesh doesn't distort any higher than you want it to. And you'll see how that comes in handy as you use the tool more. And then you just use successive strokes to build the mesh up on top of each other. All right? And then if you want to smooth it, remember that you just hold down the Shift key and you can smooth out whatever you did. This thing also has a history, although I don't recommend using it. If I go here under Paint, we have this familiar green check, the X, and then this revert button. And what these are supposed to do are either, with the green check, commit the changes, with the X, cancel whatever edits you've made, painting-wise, or revert the mesh to its original state. My warning to you on this guy is that it doesn't always work, all right? It's a little flaky. So I don't even use that portion of it. I wouldn't count on it. So I can demonstrate that by clicking revert, and look, it didn't take it back to my original state because it only remembers a portion of it. So although that's a great idea that they've put in there, it doesn't actually work. So I would steer away from that. Okay, so we have push-pull, and you can also relax by just holding down the Shift key, and that's the same as saying relax soften, which does the exact same thing. We have flatten. If I go to push-pull mode here, and I'm going to increase my vector, and I'm going to turn off cap for now because I want to demonstrate. So I'm going to go, if you go into flatten mode, it's just going to take whatever feature you have and it's going to flatten it kind of on top like that. So that's kind of useful if you ever want to flatten something out. We also have pinch, spread, and this pretty much does what it says. It'll take a number of edges and pinch them together. So if you want a nice fine crease, this is the tool to use. And then if you hold down the control key, it'll spread them apart. So it either pinches if you just leave it default, or control to spread. Then we also have, that tool is fairly useful. Smudge, I really like this one. This one's awesome. Smudge allows you to take a set of edges and smudge them and kind of move them, but look what it's doing. It doesn't actually move the edges in depth at all. It just moves the edges along the ISO surface. So this can be very useful if you have a detail that you're trying to get into your model, but you don't have the edges quite in the right spot for where you want them. You can use the smudge tool to kind of gently smudge them into position for where you want to add the detail. Okay? And then we have noise. This one is not useful for this assignment. It's more for if you were going to make like an asteroid or something, and it's just going to add ambient noise along your entire mesh. And then we've got exaggerate. This one's kind of cool. What it does is it will take the existing feature and just make it more pronounced. So if I go in here, I'm going to go into paint mode, push pull. I'm going to make my brush a lot smaller. And I'm going to increase my offset. There we go. And then hold down the Alt key to push that in between. It's going to take whatever you have, whatever it's doing. If I go into exaggerate mode, and now I'm going to get a bigger brush, and it's just going to exaggerate the feature. So if you had a muscular detail that you kind of liked how it was laid out and you wanted to exaggerate it, that would be a good way to do it. And then you can come in and you can relax it back. I'm taking it all the way back to 0 here. Okay, that's pretty much it for the paint tools. Now I want to show you how you would use that on your model. So I'm going to delete this little sphere here, and I'm going to right click and say unhide all. And I have all these pesky reference planes, which I'm just going to delete. And we got our base mesh here. And currently, it has an editable poly on it, so the Freeform Tools shows up immediately. And currently, the NURM Smooth is on the mesh. So the paint, the Freeform modeling tool will work on the NURMS preview, but it's very slow. So I want to demonstrate that. So I'm going to go to push-pull mode, change my brush size here, change my vector size. Again, I'm holding down Shift plus Alt, and I'm changing that by just dragging the mouse. And if I paint to deform this, See, it's actually working, but it is ridiculously slow. The feedback is just not, kind of not worth using. So I guess what I'm trying to say is don't try to use this on a NURMS previewed mesh. You're going to end up fighting the tool too much, and it's just not going to be that fun of an experience. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to turn off the NURMS, and then I want to take my mesh here, and I kind of want to prepare it for sculpting. And one of the things you want to do to prepare a mesh for sculpting is you want to get rid of any rectangular polygons and kind of replace them all with polygons that are more square. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into edge mode, and I'm going to select any polygon edge loops that are rectangular, and I'm going to connect them to get them to be more square. So right there I did one, and then I'm going to connect it. This one also is too rectangular, so I'm going to connect that. The forearm is way too rectangular, so I'm going to connect that. These are way too rectangular, connect those also. Alright, same thing here. Too rectangular, I'm going to ring that out, connect it. Ring this, connect. And then we got one more down here at the ankle. I'm going to ring it and connect it. Alright, and then let's just say that's pretty close to square. Close enough. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare this thing for sculpting. And I'm going to go ahead and to put a turbo smooth on it. So I'm going to say turbo smooth. And before I'm going to actually bake this turbo smooth. And before I do that, I'm going to save another version of this file, because I want to be able to get back here if I ever want to. And this one I'd probably give a descriptive name like body control cage or something like that. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my turbo smooth, and this is very important. This is still currently not quite enough detail here to get into the sculpting tool, the freeform modeling. So I'm going to go ahead and increase the iterations to a 2. And now we've got a pretty decent amount of polygons to work with for sculpting. And this is probably a pretty decent resolution for a medium level sculpt of my model. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that, and I'm going to bake it down. So I'm going to say collapse all and say yes. I have no worries on that operation because I saved a copy and I can always get back to the control cage if I need to. Alright, so now I have this mesh kind of in a sculptable state, but I need some reference imagery. So I'm going to create a box, and I'll just do that here in the orthographic front viewport. I'm going to hold down the control key to make it square. I don't really care where I'm putting this because I'm going to move it anyway. So I'm going to change its height to be relatively flat. So I'm going to do like a 0.01. And I'm going to apply some reference in here so that I can kind of have some reference for what I'm about to do, which is start modeling the abdominals into this mesh. So I've got a few pictures for you here in the ref folder, and it's renders of this body model with full muscular detail from all angles. So you can kind of use that if you want to. You don't have to do this guy. You could use your own reference, but I'm going to use this as my reference. So see how the abdominals are kind of really asymmetrical and almost weird? It's almost like, looks like almost like worms crawling under his skin. It's not the normal like, Hershey's bar six-pack that you see on most computer-generated models. So what we're looking for is really organic mesh. So what better source than a scan of a bodybuilder? So I'm going to go ahead and drag that shot onto my reference plane, and check it out. I have in-scene imagery of what I'm shooting for. And I'm just going to kind of leave it there. Now this one I want to go ahead and mirror. And I'm going to do it as an instance, and I'm going to say OK. And now I want to turn off my wireframe on shaded. And I'm going to start sculpting these ab muscles just on one side here into my mesh. So I'm going to select it, and notice how I don't, if I go to the Graphite and I go to Freeform, I can't access the tools. And the reason for that is because this is currently an editable mesh, not an editable poly. So I have to right click on it and say editable poly, and then boom, now my Freeform tools show up. I'm going to go into paint mode. I'm going to do push pull. I'm going to change my vector here. That's actually a decent brush size. I'm going to change my vector, again, Shift, Alt. And what did I say? I'm going to make it about the third of the depth or thereabouts that I'm trying to go for. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sketch this in. So I'm going to draw this muscle right here. Now I'm going to draw this one. So it's really weird and organic. Then I'm going to go down here. I'm drawing this one. So it kind of starts here, goes up and over, comes over here. And then now I'm going to switch. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key because I actually want to push that in a little bit right there. And then here we go. I'm going to add some shape over here on this muscle. And for your first pass, you're going to want to keep this fairly loose, all right? And I'm just trying to block everything in and get it all looking correct and get it all in the right place. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and do another pass later, once I've established that, yes, everything looks right and everything's in the right place, and I have it all blocked out. I'm going to do another pass where I subdivide this even further, and I'm going to come in and refine it even further. So again, we're always drilling down from low detail to medium detail to high detail to super high detail. All right, so right now we're kind of in the medium detail pass. You can see here I'm kind of running out of detail. And the reason for that is because if I show my wireframe, we really don't have quite enough edges to really tighten up these transitions yet between the muscles. And we're going to do that later when we get another subdivision on it. And we can do another pass. So now I'm going to come in here and see this little crease here, the shape at the shoulder. Super easy to get. I'm going to hold down the Alt key. Change my vector a little bit. It's a little bit too light for that. So I'm going to hold down the Control key. Oops, I'm naming that wrong. I'm holding down the Alt key to depress it, push it in. So see, I'm putting that little divot in there by holding down the Alt. And then if I have a weird transition here that's kind of not smooth, I hold down the Shift key to smooth that out. If I want to go ahead and add this clavicle detail in here, I'm going to go ahead and just paint it in. So using the pull. And then when I don't like the transition, I'm going to hold down the Shift key to smooth it out. I can start adding the neck muscle here, blending the transition with the Shift key. I can hold down the Alt key to depress this a little bit to start building up my back muscle. See how that's working? So you can see here that really fast, once you get command of the tools, and you're just going to have to play with them a little bit, you can start getting subtle details into your mesh that would take, ridiculous amounts of time if you were to do it by pulling vertices. So the first pass is you want to keep it loose like I'm doing, just medium level detail, and I recommend that you start in segments, in manageable chunks. So start with like the abs, then go up and do the shoulders and the pecs, and then move over to the top of the back. And keep everything in a manageable chunk. And do that one pass all the way around. And then once you have that done, then you might go back and do another pass. And try to define it as much as you can at this medium level mesh. Don't go any farther than that, because we're going to connect everything next week and actually sew everything together. And then you're going to do one final pass after we subdivide the mesh. And that's when you're going to tighten it up for good for the final mesh. All right? So this is the modern workflow for character modeling, and this isn't going to change as you guys move forward from this class into ZBrush and Mudbox and all that. This workflow is identical, except for those tools are a lot more advanced. So just think of this as kind of like the Cliff Notes for this workflow, and this will be the workflow that you'll use probably, I would imagine, for the next 20 years. It's super solid. I don't think it's going anywhere. All right, so that's it. And again, don't go any denser than this. I subdivided the body mesh twice, so don't subdivide the body mesh any more than twice. On the hand, you probably only subdivide it once. On the head, I think once is enough. And on the ear, I don't think you want to subdivide that at all. That one's fine. Okay? Don't connect anything. We're going to do that next week. And good luck.